In a world that glorifies movement, speed and noise, sitting quietly has become an act of rebellion. We are surrounded by constant distractions, screens, thoughts, people and ambitions pulling us in every direction. Yet, beneath all this noise lies the most powerful space of transformation: silence. When you learn to sit quietly, not as an escape, but as a conscious act of awareness, your entire perception of life begins to shift. Stillness is not the absence of life, it is the foundation of true living. Sitting quietly is an act of immense power, not passivity. It demands a strength that few possess, the strength to be still when everything around urges movement, reaction and restlessness. In silence, you face yourself without distraction, without escape, without a mask. It is not the body that struggles to sit, it is the mind that rebels, desperate to keep its noise alive. To master stillness is to master the storm within, for only in stillness can one stand unshaken amid life's chaos. When a person learns to sit quietly, they begin to witness the endless movement of thoughts passing like clouds across the sky. The one who chases every thought becomes lost, but the one who sits and watches discovers freedom. In that quiet observation, you see how unnecessary most mental noise truly is. Thoughts lose their grip, emotions settle, and clarity begins to emerge from the depths of awareness. You start realizing that silence is not empty, it is full of everything that truly matters. Stillness is a fire that burns away illusions. It forces you to confront what you run from, your fears, your doubts, your hidden pain. Yet it is through this confrontation that transformation takes place. When you stop resisting your own mind, a profound shift happens. The restless becomes restful, the anxious becomes aware, and what once felt unbearable becomes sacred. The world outside no longer dictates your peace, because your peace no longer depends on it. In quiet sitting, time itself seems to change. Minutes expand and the ordinary feels eternal. You step outside the mechanical rhythm of days and into the vast rhythm of existence. It is here that you begin to sense the deeper pulse of life moving through you. In stillness, the boundary between yourself and the world starts to dissolve. You begin to see that separation was only an illusion created by constant motion and thought. The mind is like a river that never stops flowing. Every moment, thoughts rise and fall, pulling your attention in 1,000 directions. To sit quietly is not to dam the river or fight its current, but to sit by the bank and watch it flow. The river may roar, but in time, it begins to slow on its own when you no longer feed it with your reactions. You begin to realize that peace does not come by controlling the mind, it comes by witnessing it without becoming it. When you stop jumping into the stream of thoughts, a strange calm begins to appear. The mind loses its power to drag you into fear, worry or regret. The same mind that once seemed wild and uncontrollable becomes still and obedient, like a river reflecting the sky. The struggle ends not because the river stops flowing, but because you have stopped trying to control its direction. You learn that silence is not found by force, but by surrender. This watching changes everything. You begin to see how each thought is born, lives for a moment and dies on its own. You no longer chase what is pleasant or run from what is painful. You start seeing that every thought is just passing water, temporary, weightless, powerless unless you choose to hold on to it. In this quiet seeing, the endless chatter of the mind loses its authority and a deeper intelligence starts to awaken from within. As you remain still, awareness becomes sharper and the river begins to reveal its depth. Beneath the surface noise lies a vast, unmoving space, untouched, undisturbed and free. This is where the real self lives, not as a collection of memories or desires, but as a silent witness. In this space, there is no struggle to be better, no hunger to become something else, no fear of losing what never truly belonged to you. When a person begins to truly observe their thoughts, something fundamental shifts within. The mind, which once acted as a master, begins to reveal its patterns, fears and illusions. Observation does not demand effort, it only requires presence. When you watch a thought rise without chasing it or labeling it, that very act weakens its hold. Thoughts feed on your identification with them. Once you stop calling them yours, they lose the power to disturb your inner space. Each thought is like a wave on the surface of the ocean, temporary and powerless before the depth beneath. When you stay at the surface, the waves seem violent and endless. But when awareness sinks deeper, the ocean's calm becomes unshaken. Observation takes you from the surface noise to that silent depth where no wave can reach. The moment you see that thoughts are not you, but only passing echoes, transformation begins without struggle or discipline. The strength of awareness lies in its neutrality. It does not resist the thought or welcome it simply sees. This seeing is like light entering a dark room. The darkness does not need to be fought, it disappears naturally. When awareness burns bright, confusion fades and what remains is clarity. Every thought, emotion and impulse reveals itself as part of a larger movement of life. You begin to understand that you are not the storm, but the sky in which it moves. In that state of pure observation, even pain becomes transparent. You begin to witness sorrow without drowning in it, anger without being consumed by it, desire without becoming its slave. Awareness cuts through the fog of attachment and shows things as they are. The mind may still speak, but its voice loses command. What once felt heavy begins to lighten because the observer is untouched by the weight of what is seen. The world outside may seem noisy, filled with constant movement and endless voices, yet none of it can compare to the chaos that exists within. The mind speaks in countless tones, arguing, judging, comparing and remembering all at once. It creates a storm that never truly rests, no matter how silent the surroundings may be. You can close the door to the world, but you cannot close the door to your thoughts. This is why even in isolation, a person may still feel crowded. The real noise that robs peace is not the sound of others, but the constant echo of one's own mind. When you sit in stillness, that inner noise becomes undeniable. Every hidden thought, every suppressed emotion, every forgotten memory begins to rise. This is why silence feels unbearable to many. It exposes what has long been buried beneath distraction. Yet this confrontation is the beginning of transformation. When the noise surfaces, you finally see its source. The mind feeds on attention, and when you simply observe it without resistance, its energy begins to fade. Awareness cuts through confusion like a blade through fog. The attempt to control or silence the mind through force only strengthens its rebellion. The more you fight with thoughts, the louder they become. But when you allow them to pass without ownership, they lose their grip. The art of quietness lies not in suppressing noise, but in ceasing to identify with it. The mind's chatter continues, yet something deeper within remains untouched. That still point, buried beneath all movement, begins to reveal itself as the true center of being. As this awareness deepens, the distinction between inner and outer noise begins to dissolve. The world may remain loud, yet it no longer disturbs the core of your stillness. The chaos around you becomes like waves crashing against a mountain, loud but harmless. When inner silence is established, external disturbances cannot shake it. This silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of clarity, strength and unbroken calm. Doing nothing is not laziness, it is the highest form of balance. When you stop interfering, life begins to move in its own natural rhythm. The body knows how to heal, the mind knows how to settle, and existence itself knows how to restore harmony. Every moment you try to control life, you disturb this rhythm. But when you stop forcing outcomes, a deeper intelligence takes over, one that does not need your direction, only your trust. In the stillness of doing nothing, the body starts to breathe differently. Every muscle relaxes, every nerve loosens its grip, and the pulse slows to meet the pace of life itself. The tension that was once hidden under constant activity begins to dissolve. You feel the weight of unnecessary effort fall away. In that effortless state, energy no longer leaks through worry or resistance. It gathers, strengthens, and begins to flow with quiet precision. The mind, once restless and scattered, starts to align when it is not being pushed. Thoughts slow, emotions lose their sharpness, and silence becomes fertile. Out of that silence, understanding blossoms on its own. You realize that most of what you chase was never needed, and most of what you feared was never real. The clarity that emerges in stillness is not created by thought, it is born from awareness itself, untouched by confusion or desire. Doing nothing allows the invisible forces of life to complete their work, just as the earth nourishes a seed without instruction. Existence nourishes you when you allow it. There is no effort in sunlight, no struggle in the ocean's tide, no resistance in the wind's flow, yet everything gets done. In the same way, when you rest deeply in being, the right actions arise naturally, without conflict between will and wisdom. When the mind slows down, time begins to stretch in ways the clock cannot measure. Each moment feels larger, fuller and richer. The usual hurry that defines human life starts to lose its meaning. What was once a blur of minutes and hours becomes a living experience of the present. In silence, you step out of time's mechanical motion and into something boundless, where the past and future no longer hold authority. The ticking clock remains, but its grip on your attention weakens until only awareness itself feels real. The rhythm of existence is not linear, it flows like breath, expanding and contracting, yet always whole. When you are silent, you begin to sense this hidden rhythm. Every sound, every movement, even the faintest whisper of wind seems part of a deeper pulse. This awareness changes your relationship with time. You no longer live by seconds and deadlines, but by presence and depth. The same minute that once vanished in distraction now becomes an eternity of stillness. As silence deepens, you realize how much of your life has been lost in the rush to arrive somewhere else. The habit of chasing the next moment blinds you to the vastness of this one. When you stop running, time opens like a flower. The mind that once measured life in fragments now begins to experience it as a single, unbroken flow. In that flow, there is no impatience, no anxiety, no race to the finish, only the fullness of being alive right now. In silence, you meet time as a companion, not an enemy. The constant pressure of not enough time dissolves because there is finally no separation between you and the moment. Every breath becomes sufficient, every heartbeat complete. You begin to see that time was never moving against you, it was only your resistance that made it feel so. The still mind moves in harmony with time's quiet unfolding, and life stops feeling like a chase and starts feeling like a song. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the disappearance of resistance. When you sit in true stillness, everything you have built to define yourself begins to fade. The name, the identity, the endless story you tell yourself, all of it loses its weight. What remains is not emptiness, but an awareness so vast that the mind cannot comprehend it. In that space, you do not become nothing, you become everything, free from the boundaries of form and thought. The mind survives on noise, on the constant movement of ideas and images. It clings to identity because silence threatens its existence. But when you no longer fear silence, you step beyond the reach of the mind. The chatter may continue, but you are no longer within it. You begin to see that the mind is only a surface wave of a much deeper ocean. The real self lies beneath, unchanging, untouched and unbroken by any ripple above. When silence enters you completely, the separation between you and life dissolves. There is no longer an observer and the observed, no inner and outer, no question and answer. Everything merges into a single awareness that simply is. This realization does not come through effort or belief, but through the gentle melting of boundaries. In that melting, you discover that peace was never something to be achieved, it was your nature all along. In silence, even time loses its structure. The past no longer pulls and the future no longer promises. You rest in a stillness that does not move, yet contains all movement within it. The constant need to define, to explain, to understand begins to fall away. What remains is clarity beyond words, a knowing that does not depend on thought. Silence reveals truth, not through sound, but through its unbroken presence. Peace is not something to be created, it is something that was never lost. Beneath the noise, beneath the struggle, beneath the endless movement of thought, peace has always been there. Silent, patient, waiting. The problem is not the absence of peace, but the constant interference of the restless mind. Every desire, every fear, every judgment covers it like layers of dust on a clear mirror. The moment you stop trying to manufacture peace and instead begin to see through the clutter, the mirror starts to reflect again. The mind believes that peace must be earned, achieved through effort or discipline. It runs after silence like a traveler chasing the horizon, never realizing that the destination lies within each step. Effort itself becomes the barrier, because effort is born from resistance. The more you strive to be still, the more movement you create. When you stop striving, when you simply allow everything to be as it is, the noise begins to fade on its own. The calm that follows is not something new, it is the natural state of your being revealed. The layers that hide peace are made of thought, opinions, memories and fears. Each thought claims importance, demanding attention like waves crashing upon the shore. But when you do not chase the waves, the ocean begins to show its depth. The same mind that once felt like a battlefield becomes clear, open and vast. This transformation does not come from suppressing thought, but from seeing that every thought is temporary and powerless once you stop identifying with it. As awareness deepens, even the idea of searching for peace begins to dissolve. You no longer treat peace as a reward to be earned or a state to be reached. It becomes clear that peace was never missing. It was only obscured by your constant need to control, fix and understand. When the mind falls silent not by force but by recognition, peace rises naturally, effortless and complete. It is not an achievement, but a revelation of what you have always been. Stillness is not withdrawal from life, it is immersion into it. When movement ceases, perception sharpens. The endless noise of doing and becoming begins to fall away, and what remains is pure awareness. In that awareness, the boundary between the observer and the observed starts to dissolve. What you once called you and the world no longer appear separate. Stillness reveals that existence is not made of parts, but of one seamless whole, breathing through countless forms. When the mind quiets, it stops slicing reality into fragments. The trees, the wind, the sky, and even the pulse within your veins begin to feel like expressions of the same rhythm. You start sensing that everything moves together as if guided by a silent harmony beneath all sound. The illusion of isolation begins to crumble and the need to protect, to compete, to dominate loses its power. What remains is connection without effort, belonging without identity. This realization cannot be reached through thought, for thought itself divides. It is born in stillness when the observer disappears and only observation remains. In that moment, there is no me watching that. There is only seeing, only being. The same energy that flows through the mountains flows through your breath. The same intelligence that shapes the stars beats within your chest. When you are still, this truth does not need to be believed. It becomes undeniable. Every breath becomes a witness when you sit quietly. The ordinary air entering your lungs no longer feels mundane, it carries the weight of life itself. The body, which is often ignored in its rhythm, begins to feel every pulse, every subtle motion, every point of contact with existence. In this awareness, even the smallest actions acquire significance. The act of sitting transforms into an encounter with reality, and the rhythm of your own being begins to harmonize with the larger flow of life. Thoughts, which once demanded attention and created constant turbulence, begin to lose their authority. Each idea rises and falls like waves on a river, but you remain on the shore, untouched by the current. The mind's usual insistence on distraction weakens, and in its place, clarity emerges. You begin to see patterns, connections and truths that were invisible amidst the chaos. This clarity is not forced, it arises naturally when attention is no longer fragmented. Time itself begins to change when stillness becomes a companion. Minutes expand into fullness, and the ordinary stretches into something eternal. Past regrets and future anxieties dissolve as the present moment asserts its primacy. Life is no longer measured in accomplishments, deadlines or outcomes. Instead, it is measured by the depth of awareness you bring to each moment. Every heartbeat, every inhalation, every pause between thoughts becomes sacred, revealing the profound simplicity of existence. In this quiet, the soul begins to speak. You sense a connection beyond labels, beyond roles, beyond personal narratives. There is an intimacy with life that was previously masked by constant doing. Pain, joy, fear and desire all become part of a single, flowing current rather than separate, conflicting forces. The experience of sitting quietly transforms understanding into wisdom and observation into presence. You realize that life has never required achievement, it has only required attention. When you learn to sit quietly, you are not escaping the world. You are entering it fully, perhaps for the first time. In that space of stillness, you don't chase life anymore. Life begins to flow through you effortlessly. The true change does not happen through movement, but through awareness. And when you can sit still in your own presence, you have already changed your life.